What is an IRA recharacterization? What are 4 reasons you might want to recharacterize an IRA contribution or conversion? And is there such a thing as an expensive index fund? We'll answer these questions and more on this, the 102nd episode of the DoughRoller podcast.
Welcome to the DoughRoller podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Hey, everybody, this podcast is sponsored by Betterment, the most preferred automated investing service. Betterment has cutting-edge technology to optimize returns, minimize taxes, and save you time and money. Join over 34,000 customers who have already streamlined their portfolio management at betterment.com/roller. That's betterment.com/ROLLER. So I got an email from a reader named Robert not long ago, and I want to share it with you. I think it was a very good email. I love these sorts of emails because he pointed out some things in a podcast that he thought were inaccurate, and I think he makes some good points, and I'm going to read that for you today before we get to the main topic, which is recharacterizing an IRA contribution or conversion. And it's a very important tool in your retirement planning tool belt, and one that I think a lot of people don't either don't know about or don't understand the full extent of it. And that comes from another email from yet another reader. So we got a couple emails today. And so first, let's get to Robert's email. Here's what he says. He says, "Hello again, Rob. I just finished listening to your podcast on load mutual funds." That's podcast 99. "And there were a few minor inaccuracies that I would like to point out." What? Inaccuracies in one of my podcasts? I don't believe it. Well, I should keep reading. He had 3 of them. I'm going to read them one at a time and give you my reaction. The first one, he said, if you switch load mutual funds within the same family, in other words, the same mutual fund family, you do not have to pay the load again. The load that you paid sticks with the investment. So if you listen to podcast 99, we talked about that if you buy a mutual fund through a commissioned broker, they'll put you into A shares of a mutual fund like American, for example, and you'll pay 5.75% right up front in sales charges. So if you invest $100,000, you'll pay $57.50 right off the bat in a sales charge. And then what do you do if the broker a few years later recommends that you get out of that fund and go to a different fund? And I pointed out that you could end up paying another load. Well, as Robert rightly points out, and others had too, by the way, if you stay within the same fund family, then you don't have to pay the load again. Now, I don't know if that's universally true. As far as I know, it is. But a very good point, and I'm glad Robert pointed that out. As I said, others did. So if you're working with a commission broker, keep that in mind. Very, very important way to keep your costs down if you're working, if you're buying A shares and working with a commissioned broker. All right, point number 2. You indicated that after the sale, the broker no longer gets payment from a load mutual fund, but actually they do continue to get a small draw from a 12B1 fee, typically 25 basis points for an A share. So a good point. This actually requires a little bit of explanation. In podcast 99, I was addressing an argument that you'll often hear from commission brokers that goes like this. Yes, you'll pay 5.75% up front. But then that's all you pay. That's the only sales charge you pay. And if you go with a fee-only advisor, you'll continue to pay. It's typically a lot smaller. It's not 5.75%. 1% might be standard, but you pay it year in and year out. So if you stick with these shares long enough, you'll end up actually doing better paying the commission than you would paying a fee-only advisor. So Robert points out, well, technically they do continue to get a small draw. I guess the thing I would say there is that you have to understand that that's not coming out of your pot. Well, it is and it isn't. That comes out of the expense ratio of the mutual fund. So an American fund might be 60, 65 basis points. Part of that goes to the broker. It's not a separate sales charge. But Robert is correct as far as I know that they will continue to get that small fee, but I don't think it changes. I guess in some ways you could argue that it makes the argument even weaker for a commission broker, but I don't think so. It probably comes out the same because that comes out of the expense ratio that you'd be pain anyway. And I would add one other thing. I should probably do a whole podcast on fee-only advisors because, I'm not a big fan of commission brokers because I think when you get paid a commission to sell a product, it influences your recommendations. I just don't think there's any way around that. And that's not to say that it's never a proper approach because I don't think that's true. And I could even imagine myself selling products on a commission in some context. But that being said, I got to tell you, I talk to more and more fee-only advisors. There are many good ones out there, but there are some out there that either charge an arm and a leg. Yeah, they're fee-only, and they're just it boggles the mind the fees that they charge. Or frankly, they're not very good at what they do. So just because you're a fee-only advisor or you're contemplating hiring a fee-only advisor, they'll promote the fact that they're fee-only. That doesn't make them good or make them right for you. So anyway, I'll move off of that for now. Third point from Robert, he says, you suggested that index mutual funds were not typically available to people who use traditional brokers, and I found out the hard way that this was not the case. About 15 years ago, in one of my countless unsuccessful attempts to get my father to dump his stockbroker and buy index funds, he informed me that he did break down and buy an index fund. His broker sold him SPI-CX, a level load C-share S&P 500 index fund with an expense ratio of 1.36%, which guaranteed that he would trail the S&P 500 by at least 1.3%. After that, I thought it was probably better for him to continue to buy and hold blue chip stocks, probably better in the long run, and he was more comfortable. Well, that's interesting. I guess I should, when I talk about index funds, I'm talking about the Vanguards and the inexpensive Fidelities and others where the expense ratios are much, much lower. I guess I kind of just imply that, but maybe I shouldn't. Maybe there are those index funds out there that are crazy expensive. Why those products even exist or how they may continue to have assets under management, I have no earthly idea. But Robert, I appreciate you pointing that out. Then he concluded, by the way, people could do a lot worse than investing in American funds. I agree with that. And if working with an advisor and paying a load for fundamental investors keeps the investor sticking with his or her plan in good and bad markets, it can be worth it. In another investing lifetime, I was an investor in the fundamental investors specifically and have no complaints. And the consistent performance relative to the appropriate benchmarks speaks for itself. American funds are, in my mind, the vanguard of the broker-sold fund world. Of course, we are better off with Vanguard. Best regards and happy anniversary. Appreciate that. One of the things I emailed him back and said, I've heard this argument that if you have an advisor, and that's whether they're commissioned and selling you American funds, or maybe they're fee only and putting you in Vanguard funds or some other fund, dimensional funds or whatever, that you're more likely to stick to your investing plan. And one of the things I asked Robert was, do you have any research on that? Because I hear it all the time, and it makes sense to me. To me, that's one of the most important jobs of a financial advisor, whether they're getting paid based on a commission or fee only, doesn't matter. That's their number one job, is to help their clients stick with their investment plan. If they ain't doing that, they are not earning their pay, period. Now, they can't, control what you do. A client can always decide, no, I'm going to cash out and take everything to cash. But if an advisor is not doing what he or she can to put people in the right plan to begin with, that they stick with through good and bad markets, they're not earning their pay, period. So I asked Robert, do you know any research, though, that actually shows that if you have an advisor, fee or commission, you're more likely to stick with your plan? And he said he'd take a look. I've done some research and haven't found anything yet. I can't say that I've done an extensive survey of the studies out there. If you know of anything on that topic, I would love to see it. So shoot me an email, dr@DoughRoller.net. I'd love to know if there are studies out there that show that those with advisors are more likely to stick to a plan. By the way, even if there are, or even if there aren't, it doesn't answer the question for you what you should do. I love the folks that say you should do X. You should never use a credit card because studies show that if you do, you'll spend more money. Well, that's fine. The study has some value, but that study doesn't dictate what I do. I may or may not spend more money with a credit card. You may or may not spend more money by using a credit card. It doesn't mean that everyone will spend more money than they otherwise should if they use plastic. Same is true whether, in this context of an advisor. Still, I think the studies can be enlightening and helpful. And so if you have anything along those lines, would love for you to share it with me. And a big thank you to Robert. I love when I get emails like this because I think that's how we all learn. And I've learned a ton from you guys, and I really, really appreciate it. Okay, now on to the main topic, recharacterization. What in the world is that? Well, let me read an email that I received from Chinton, and I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, and I apologize if I'm not. Hi, Rob. I've been a subscriber to your newsletter for a few months, and am recently listening to the podcast. Keep up the great work. I am 29 years old and have recently started thinking seriously about retirement. I wish I should have started earlier. I love that. 29 and wish they would have started earlier. Well, yeah, earlier is better, but 29, well, that's pretty good. I was listening to your podcast about the backdoor Roth conversion and had a question. I have an IRA from 2012 and 13 tax years. In order to get a head start for 2014 tax year, I contributed the maximum amount to my IRA in February of 2014. However, I changed jobs in February, and my income will now be above the IRA limit. We'll come back to that. So I asked my accountant, and he informed me that I should take a penalty and take the money out. I did not listen to him and found out from my brokerage at ShareBuilder that I can recharacterize the $5,500 contribution to a Roth IRA. I completed the paperwork for recharacterization in March of 2014, and the amount that was recharacterized was $5,700. Why $5,700 and not $5,500? Is this because they looked at my IRA contribution from 2012 and 13 tax years? I would appreciate your help. Thank you very much. So he and I, we've emailed back and forth and worked out the issue. He did some more back and forth with his broker, and he's worked out his sort of specific issues. We'll talk about those, but it worked out well for him, and I'm happy to hear that. But I thought, well, this is maybe a great opportunity to talk about IRA recharacterization, something, by the way, that I have never done, but I suspect I will. We'll see. So the first thing I want to talk about is his reference to change jobs in February of 2014, and my income will be above the IRA limit. So I want to clarify that, and I'm kind of reading between the lines here, but so here's the deal. There is no income limit that prohibits you from contributing to an IRA, right? If you have enough earned income to meet the limit, $5,500 in 2014, you can contribute to an IRA. LeBron James can contribute to an IRA. I don't care how much you make, you can contribute to an IRA. What I assume he's referring to is his income has gone up high enough so that he can't deduct that IRA contribution. He can contribute to the IRA, but he can't deduct it. Now that's, again, I'm reading between the lines a little bit, but I'm guessing that's the situation. Then you ask, well, wait a minute. If that's true, why in the world did his accountant suggest that he take out the money and take a penalty? Well, I can only guess because his accountant doesn't appreciate all of the rules relating to IRAs. I don't know. If you've listened to my podcast about my $100,000 mistake, you know my own issues with getting advice on how to deal with retirement accounts. Look, these things are complicated. I don't pretend to have all of the answers. I'm learning this as much as anybody. And that's why it's always good to do what this listener did, and that was reach out to his broker to make sure he knew what his options were. So kudos for not simply taking the accountant's advice, going out and getting a second opinion from a broker who specializes in, among other things, retirement accounts. So that's what I think was going on. Now, let's talk about recharacterization and what exactly that is. So if you think about IRAs, we make, of course, contributions, whether it's to a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. And, of course, there are other types of IRAs as well, but we'll just stick with these, the primary two that I think most of us deal with. And we make contributions each year, presumably, or when we have the money, and it makes sense for our retirement plans. And then the other thing that we can do, so that's a contribution, right? Pretty simple, straightforward. But the other thing we can do is convert from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. And we've talked about this in the context of a backdoor Roth IRA contribution. I should maybe make some explanation here because I think the terminology gets a little confusing. So here's the deal. Let's assume you've got $100,000 in your IRA and it's all pre-tax. In other words, you've either rolled over a 401k into your IRA, or these are just from your yearly contributions and they were all deductible. You can convert either in one lump sum or over a number of years. You can convert that to a Roth. And if you do, you'll pay taxes on it based on whatever your tax rate is in the year you make the conversion. That would be a conversion, right? It's not a contribution. You think of it as a conversion. I'm converting from a traditional a deductible IRA to a Roth IRA. Well, when we talk about a backdoor Roth IRA, it really is just a term of art to describe a strategy where you take after-tax dollars that you've put into an IRA and convert them to a Roth. Because they're after-tax dollars, the conversion shouldn't trigger any taxes unless there were some earnings in your IRA account after you made the contribution. It's still a conversion, though. You're still converting an IRA to, in this case, a Roth IRA. And there are a number of factors to consider before you do the backdoor Roth. You have to look at things like deductible IRA amounts that you have and what impact they will have on the conversion. So kind of a lot of different things there, but it's still at the end of the day a conversion, right? And as I look through my long list of podcasts, I did a podcast on a backdoor Roth. If you want more details about that, that's podcast 40, DoughRoller.net/podcast 40 if you want to understand backdoor Roths a little better. So today what I want to do, though, is focus on a recharacterization. So the first thing I want to do is sort of talk about the mechanics of it. What is it? How does it work? And then we're going to walk through 4 different scenarios where you might want to consider a recharacterization, okay? So how does it work? So let's imagine you've got that $100,000 in your deductible before-tax IRA, and you convert it now, middle of the tax year, to a Roth IRA, and you're going to pay the taxes, right? Whatever they are. Let's say you're in the 25% tax bracket, so you pay $25,000 in taxes. And you then, for whatever reason, we'll talk about some of the reasons, but you decide, no, that was a bad move. I kind of wish I could just undo that. Well, you can. You can say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to recharacterize that. I want to undo that. You can just do that with the recharacterization, and you'd get your tax money back. Of course, there's paperwork to fill out. You deal with the trustee of your fund or the broker to do this. It's really actually quite simple. And there are deadlines, though. You can't decide 10 years later that you want to recharacterize this IRA to Roth IRA conversion. So if you were in the middle of the year, you would have to do the recharacterization before your tax deadline the following year, including extensions. So you could go out to October 15th of the following year to recharacterize, in this case, the conversion. Now, here's the other thing. You can also recharacterize a contribution. So let's say you put money in the middle of the year to a deductible IRA. And again, we'll talk about some reasons why you'd want to do this, but for whatever they are, you decide, no, I meant to contribute that money to a Roth. I want to recharacterize that contribution as a Roth. Well, you can do that. And the reverse is true. Let's say you put it in a Roth to begin with, and then, I want to have that in a deductible IRA. Don't want it in a Roth. You can recharacterize that as well. Again, you've got the deadlines to consider, right? You can't do this 10 years later. But this is a really important tool that can help you out in a lot of different ways. And so that's what I want to talk about. I'm just going to run through 4 scenarios where you might want to consider this recharacterization. You ready? So here we go. The first 2 would be reasons why you might want to recharacterize a contribution, right? So let's imagine you've contributed to an IRA, a regular traditional IRA, in whatever, March of a tax year, and you plan to deduct it. You're going to deduct your contribution. And then good news, you got a new job or a raise, and you're making a lot more money as the year goes on. And you get to February of the next year, you're working on your taxes, and you realize, I can't take the deduction. I've got a workplace retirement account, and now my income has gone up so high, good for me, but now I can't deduct that IRA. And that was my plan. I can't do it. Well, goodness, I would have been just better off putting it in a Roth. Well, okay, you can recharacterize. You've not gone past the deadline. You can, say, nope, I want to recharacterize that IRA contribution, and now it's magically a Roth. Of course, again, you've got to go through the paperwork, work with wherever you hold your IRA at Vanguard or Betterment or Fidelity or wherever you are. You should be able to recharacterize that IRA to a Roth. Now, the reverse may be true. This is the second scenario. Maybe you initially contributed the money as a Roth IRA, and maybe you want to send it back. Maybe you've gotten a big raise. It didn't disqualify you. Your raise wasn't so big that it disqualified you from making the Roth. That can happen too. But maybe it's put you in some higher tax brackets, and you think, boy, I'd be better off with that deduction. So I'd like to get this out of the Roth and into a regular IRA so that I can take the deduction. The deduction is more valuable to me than what I thought it would be when I made the contribution earlier in the year, for example. Well, again, the recharacterization comes to your rescue. You can recharacterize the contribution from the Roth over to, a traditional IRA and take the deduction. So those are two scenarios where you might want to recharacterize a contribution. What about a conversion? We'll use our example again of $100,000. You convert $100,000 from your deductible IRA, pre-tax IRA, to a Roth. You've paid your taxes. Why in the world would you want to undo that? Well, a couple scenarios come to mind. First is, let's say you do that in February of a taxable year, and come December, we've hit a bear market, and that $100,000 is now only worth $75,000. Like, wow, I paid taxes on $100,000 of taxable income that's now only worth $75,000. That's a bad deal. Well, once again, the recharacterization comes to your rescue. You can recharacterize that, undo it. It goes back to your traditional pre-tax IRA. You'll get your tax money back if you'd paid it, say, as an estimated tax. You'll get that back, and it's a do-over, right? And that is, I think, probably the scenario that most people are familiar with, the recharacterization. They'd converted to a Roth, the market declined, and rather than paying taxes on $100,000 when they've only got $75,000 in their account, let's do a recharacterization, and following the rules, you'll be able to reconvert back to a Roth down the road with obviously a much smaller balance, but great in terms of taxes. It won't trigger the same tax bill that a $100,000 conversion would trigger. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details right in this podcast, but that use of a recharacterization has generated all kinds of fancy ways to convert IRAs with multiple accounts to see which one does the best, and then you recharacterize what maybe fell in value. So you can see people converting multiple accounts. Let's say, for example, you had $200,000. You only wanted to convert 100 of it, but you could convert all 200 in separate accounts, and then maybe two separate accounts. Imagine two separate accounts, $100,000 each, and you plan right from the beginning to recharacterize one of them, and you're going to recharacterize the one maybe that falls in value, for example. Well, that's sort of, I call that, I don't know, black belt recharacterization or ninja recharacterization. There's a lot of nuances there, a lot of rules to understand, a lot of strategies. I'll dive into that in a future podcast. But for now, I kind of want to just keep it simple. So market declines after you've converted could be a good reason to recharacterize that IRA to Roth IRA conversion. And then the fourth reason, so we had two for recharacterizing contributions. This is the second reason you might want to recharacterize a conversion, and that is you convert 100,000. Again, I'm just using that as a hypothetical. And you're of course maybe you're still working, you're making money as well. And when you get down to tax time, you realize that when you add that income that the conversion triggered to your other income, maybe it puts you in the top tax bracket, for example, or a higher tax bracket than you wanted. And you think, boy, I don't want to recharacterize all 100,000, but boy, it'd be nice if I could recharacterize, I'm just making up a number, 40,000 of it, because that would get me out of these top tax brackets. I could shave off that top piece of it, and that would bring me down into lower tax brackets. And then maybe I can reconvert that 40 grand down the road, and then I won't get hit in those top tax brackets. Well, you can do that. You can do a partial recharacterization, and that can be a very helpful tool for part of your tax planning. Again, you want to make sure you follow the rules. You got to get them right, or it messes you up. So work with your tax professional, work with your retirement professional to make sure you get that right. But That's a fourth scenario where a recharacterization could really help you out. There you go. So that's what a recharacterization is. Those are four scenarios, both with the contributions and with the conversions, where it may be helpful to you. And as always, consult with your tax and retirement specialist professionals to make sure you get it right. Hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to email me, dr@DoughRoller.net. And you can get the show notes to this episode, right? Just go to DoughRoller.net/podcast 102, the 102nd episode. DoughRoller.net/podcast 102. And they mentioned one of the listeners in the email I read mentioned the newsletter. If you want to check out the newsletter, go to DoughRoller.net/newsletter. It's a simple sign up. It's free. It goes out every Saturday at 7 p.m. And it's very easy to unsubscribe. I should comment on that because, if you're like me, I get email. I have email subscriptions, but I don't want to be overwhelmed. And sometimes I sign up for an email and then later decide to unsubscribe. There are emails that I've signed up for and unsubscribed probably 20 different times. There is a link at the bottom of every email where you can easily unsubscribe to my newsletter. So if you don't want to get them, it's simple to do. I don't do anything with my email lists except send out the emails. I don't sell my email list to anyone. I wish I could say that about everybody, but unfortunately, there are companies out there that sell email lists. Not cool, but in any event, I don't do that. And if you want to unsubscribe, it's easy to do. Hope you never do, but I get it if you do. So you can, but anyway, you can check out the newsletter, DoughRoller.net/newsletter. There you go. Again, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, dr@DoughRoller.net. Hope you have a great time and a great day. And remember, until next time, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.